I'm not going to be quite as mobile as Evan was, and part of the reason for that is I was a Republican until 4 years ago, and I'm still used to doing things that are tightly scripted. If necessary, I can deliver it without the PowerPoint, but it really, I think, helps to have a visual as well as an audio on it. The purpose of any political party, though, is to elect candidates. The Libertarian Party is not a discussion group. It's not a philosophical society. It can justify its existence only by putting up candidates for public office and ultimately electing them. So with this in mind, I want to talk about some things that may be a little bit fundamental to some of you, but it's at the heart of what we do as candidates. In this presentation, I will be talking about your brand as a candidate, how to target voters, how to handle the positive and negative aspects of campaigning, okay, I think we're finally good now, how to do opposition research and marketing. We'll start with issues development. A brand is simply the image that you want to project as a candidate. But before we can talk about how you want to project your own image as a candidate, we need to talk a little bit about how others see us as libertarians. For example, yeah, the Democrats like to see us in tinfoil hats. We're a bunch of crazy anarchists running out there. And to appeal to the Democratic voter, we have to show that we're not out to destroy society, that we have policies and solutions that will take baby steps in the right direction toward liberty, absolutely, but that we're not going to run a revolution overnight. On the other hand, I don't know whether you have this experience in your state, but here in Ohio, the Republicans think we're out to stab them in the back. That's why they keep trying to keep us off the ballot, because they think we're like a fifth column for the Democrats. And they also think we're kind of libertine, you know, that gay marriage thing that we keep pushing. So to them, we have to say that we are different from the Republicans. We do agree with them on things like fiscal responsibility. But in our campaigning, we have to talk about how we are different from both major parties. And of course, Evan dealt with that very well in his presentation. Then we have our self-image. To dream the impossible dream, Don Quixote attacking the windmill. Well, that means that we have to start believing in ourselves, that we can win and we will win. Our goal as libertarians is to empower the voters. Know the responsibilities and limitations of the office that you are running for. And if Babylon 10 would please shut up, I'd appreciate it. Know the responsibilities and limitations of your office. Don't make any promises that you can't keep. And be careful about those you do make. For example, don't talk about issues that are unrelated to your office. Many years ago, I ran for county recorder in Canton, and I got accosted, I think that's probably the correct word, at the county fair by a strong NRA guy. And he absolutely insisted that I tell him what I thought about gun control. And I told him, I'm running for county recorder. The county recorder can't do anything about gun control issues. And he persisted. He said, well, but you're going to be an influential leader in the community. Okay, I was 26 years old. I was running my very first political campaign, and the part that Evan gave about just use your stock line over and over again had not quite sunk in. So I told him, well, I'm not really very well informed on the subject, which happened to be the truth. Give me some literature. At least I had the sense not to pop up with some kind of a position on gun control. Let's say, though, that you make a mistake about issues unrelated to your office. Here's the way to prevent it. An old county auditor in Stark County said, friends may come and friends may go, but enemies accumulate. So don't make unnecessary enemies. Stick to your script. Talk about what you will work for. For example, I know out west they have these things called water commissioners. In Texas, they've got all kinds of commissioners, but we'll say district water commissioner. Don't say, I will make residential billing fairer. As a district water commissioner, you can't make residential billing fairer. You might be able to persuade the rest of your board to make residential billing fair, or you might be able to talk to the state legislature to try to persuade them to make residential billing fair. But you can work for making residential billing fairer. Or you might say, I will press for laws to. There are many things that we do running for our various offices where we really are going to need the help of the legislature to accomplish what we want to do. So as Secretary of State, and my client is a candidate for Secretary of State, you will say, I will press for laws to end gerrymandering. Obviously, he can't end gerrymandering. It might even take an amendment to the Constitution. And finally, if you are running for like state rep, and I want to apologize in advance to the congressional and U.S. Senate candidates here, I think in terms of state and local levels. So take that with a grain of salt, apply what works for you. Say, I will sponsor a bill to legalize gay marriage in Ohio. Don't say you're going to legalize gay marriage in Ohio. And I think you get the point. So, the next question you need to ask, and we're talking about really fundamental stuff here. And in a few places I may be insulting your intelligence. But as college football coaches say all the time, it doesn't matter how fancy the plays are. If you don't have the fundamentals, you're not going to win. So I'm reciting the fundamentals. And the first question you have to ask yourself is, well, why are you running for this office? What experience and special talents do you have that you can bring to this office? For example, my Secretary of State candidate is eminently qualified to be Secretary of State because he's fought ballot access battles as chairman of the State Libertarian Party for the last 6 years. He probably knows the election law better than John Husted does, Mr. Husted being the incumbent. What will you do that your opponents will not do? And conversely, what will you not do that your opponents are doing or say they're going to do? I'm talking about differentiating yourself from the two legacy party candidates. And finally, as Carla stressed this morning in her presentation, what is the libertarian approach to this office and to your issues? Now, there's some do's and don'ts that we need to keep in mind on this. Do keep up with the news media and give the libertarian take on your issues in the ways that Evan recommended in the last presentation, especially those affecting your office. Do be aware of how the Republicans and the Democrats will go all out to make you look foolish. Do present sound reasons why the incumbent should be cast out of office. And do offer solutions to the problems that you raise. The public wants you to project yourself as though you were the office holder. They do not want just some malcontent complaining about the problems that exist in the state. Next thing you need to do is identify who your target voters are. Of course, there are the few, the proud, the libertarians, but there are also other targets. Look at your independents. The reason they're independent probably is that they don't like either major party. You have an opportunity to make inroads with those voters. And quite often you can do millennials. The millennials are the people who are getting screwed by the system. We've talked several times about college students graduating and being stuck with $100,000 student loan debts. So they're not happy with the way things are. There are other constituencies you can look at. Oh, by the way, when I said millennials may not be registered to vote. Great opportunity for libertarians. You register them to vote. You're the first people who got to them. You will have a good chance of winning their loyalty. But you can also talk to Tea Parties, gun rights and gay rights activists. And, oh yeah, you know, there's some places where people don't think like Republicans or Democrats or libertarians. They're called local issues. Think about where the voters' local issues are in line with what you think. So, what issues do your voters care about? Well, how do you find that out? You, of course, follow the mass media and the blogs. The truth of the matter is, most what the Democrats like to call low information voters get their cues from the media. And that can be the daily newspapers, it can be broadcast and cable television, it can be from the internet, websites, blogs, social media, and there are weekly publications. Yeah, I know I threw in National Enquirer there. I don't pretend that it's a serious political publication. But if you think about the voters who say, well, I don't like the way Michelle Bachmann wears her hair, or about a juicy celebrity scandal affecting a congressman going to bed with somebody from Argentina, you get the idea that maybe some political opinions are formed by supermarket tabloids. I'm not saying that there's much you can do about that except to be aware of it. Look at opinion polls. One of the great sources of free information actually are the polling organizations. And I'm talking about Gallup, Harris, Public Policy, and Rasmussen. Yes, there are closed sites where they have information for their subscribers, but you would be amazed how much is out there for free. So how do we put all this together? Well, we start with the 30-second elevator speech. This is my good friend Doberman Pinscher. He's running for county dog catcher. And his 30-second speech would go something like this. My name is Doberman Pinscher, and I'm running for county dog catcher. I have 4 years experience at Joe's Junkyard, and I'm running because I believe dogs should not be jailed for crimes they did not commit. So support the rights of the dogs Vote Doberman Pinscher for dog catcher. All right, that was maybe a little silly, but I hope you got the basic point. You want to give your name, the office you're running for, why you're running for that office, and just a call to action. If you do this and you really get your 30-second speech down cold, what you will find is you already know what you're going to say to people in the political meetings, when you're going out to public events, because you're only going to have about 30 seconds to state your candidacy to people in those situations. We call it the elevator speech. Which brings us to our little exercise. Most of you got index cards, and if you don't have index cards, you can use the hotel pad. It doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure you have a piece of paper to write on. And what I would like for you to do is to write your 30-second elevator speech. And how do we do this again? What is your name? What are you running for? Why are you running for this office? And ask for their support. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to put this together, and then when we're finished, I'm going to ask for some volunteers and we'll critique their elevator speech. I'll give you another minute. All right. Who would like to be our first victim? I mean, speaker. Let's see, Matt. Stand up so everybody can hear you.
Stop the police in the county courts violating the Constitution. Vote Matt Shutter, Libertarian candidate for Shutter, for sheriff.
For sheriff. Okay. What did you think about that speech?
Didn't say his name.
Well, he did.
Yeah, he did. He just put it at the end.
Anybody could have, I mean, I could have read that same thing and you wouldn't have known if I was running or if he was running.
Right. Okay. One of the things I noticed was you didn't really talk about why you're running for office. You cited an issue. You did ask for their support, though, and that is a strength. A little bit too short, I think. And it sounded, well, it sounds kind of canned because you're doing it for the first time. But it's still a good first effort, and thank you for participating. Next.
Hi, my name is Donna Dunn. You want me to stand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please stand up.
My name is Donna Dunn, and I'm running for U.S. Congress in Indiana's 1st District. I'm running to get the government out of our bedroom, out of our businesses, and out of our bodies. I ask for your support, and together we can work together to get America back on the right track.
What do y'all think?
Good. Very good.
I think it's excellent. She sounds like a candidate who has it all together. And we all know internally we probably don't. But the idea is, as one Republican consultant said in a seminar many years ago, in politics, the truth is what the people believe. And if the people believe that she's got her act together, she's got her act together. Anyone else? All right.
Hi, my name is Ed Wright. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives for Iowa District Number 3. I have experience as a Navy veteran, engineer, farmer, and investment advisor, a small business owner. I'm running to give voters a choice who will work to protect and restore their freedoms. Please check out my website and vote for me, Wright 2014.
Okay. Comments? I thought it was pretty good. You might want to edit your biography just a little bit to make it sound a little bit more directly relevant to your race for Congress.
Okay.
But you have some good stuff in there. People like the fact you're a veteran, for one thing. And for another, yeah, keep the farmer in there too, because especially in a state like Iowa, it shows that you've actually been out in the real world. Okay, anyone else want to take a shot? All right.
Welcome, I'm Robert Burke. I'm a Libertarian candidate for governor of Wisconsin. I was lied to by my leaders. They killed over 1 million people in my name, and I'm not okay with that. I've done 5 years of studying on the system and understand what's going on. I'm here to tell you, forward's in the other direction. Vote for me this fall, November 4th. I'm Robert Burke.
I like it.
Okay. He certainly hit some raw nerves, didn't he? I think it's very good too, but I think maybe you want to be a little more explicit on what forward really means.
In Wisconsin, our logo, our motto is forward, as is the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker's motto is forward is where we're going or something like that. So our moniker is forward is in the other direction.
Okay, all right. One of those state-specific things.
I got a comment about, well, you run for governor.
Yes.
You don't declare war on other countries.
No.
Why is that relevant to the governorship?
People have a lot of distrust in these parties, and we need to play on that distrust. We're tired of war. People are done with war. They know that if they keep this up, that the kids are going to war and the grandkids are going to war. This is the #1 issue we have. We're the only party advocating for peace.
But the gentleman makes a very valid point. As governor, you can't do anything about war except one thing. There's one thing he can do about war. This would be gutsy, but he could refuse to allow the Wisconsin National Guard to be sent abroad. And that's within his constitutional rights.
Well, the second thing I can do is encourage people to leave the system and not let their kids run for, join the military. I'm telling you, it's a raw nerve issue. And since we only have one person running for Congress, I'm telling you, from a statewide standpoint, this is the win issue. Because this moves across other issues. It isn't just that we're in wars with Afghanistan and Iraq, and it isn't that we're going into Syria. It's that we have wars on drugs. We have wars on marriage. We have wars after wars after wars. And for me, when I look at the issues, even though, granted, running for governor, I'm not going to stop the wars. Believe me, the wars stop in Washington, D.C. as somebody from the state starts to take control and say, I'm done with these wars.
But as a candidate for governor, I would still encourage you to, in your 30-second speech, when this may be all somebody hears about you, to focus on a more state-specific issue.
But your
Kids
follow-up
love it.
comments,
What's that?
your follow-up comments hit the state issues very well.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, let's move on. So, what have we done so far? We've done a little bit of self-examination. Why are we doing this? Who are we supposed to be appealing to? What do our target voters care about? And we've put it together in the beginning with the 30-second elevator speech. Now, next steps would be to list, say, 3 or more issues affecting your office. Keep the number down. You don't want to have 10 or 20 of them. If you have 4 or 5, that's probably okay. But you have to remember, as Evan said, that people think in bullet points, they think in short sound bites. You're not going to be able to take too much at one time, and you're going to repeat these issues over and over and over again until it will drive you mad, and your campaign staff even madder. But that is how you stay on point. So, when you're talking about issues, give bullet points. See why the issue is a problem. And even more importantly, what will you do about that issue when elected? Then, when you've gotten to this point, you can write a 3-minute speech that you can use at candidates' nights. You can do a 15-minute speech that you can use at libertarian rallies and for speeches at service clubs, for example. And if you are still absolutely petrified of giving a speech in front of a group, I'm going to put in a plug for another organization I belong to. Join Toastmasters. You will find there a supportive group of people who will help you build your speaking skills, and even if they are rabid Democrats, they will help you. Now, I mentioned earlier the importance of doing both positive and negative campaigning. You have to have both. You have to give the voter a reason to vote for you, and you also have to have a reason for the voter to vote against your opponents. What are some ways that we can campaign positively? We can talk about your initiatives in office. We can get endorsements. Now, you need to be a little bit careful about endorsements, because the wrong endorsement will sink you as well as almost anything else. You want endorsements from the media, and you also want endorsements from people who are known and respected in your community's district or state. In other words, you want people that you can brag about supporting you. If you have an unusual political situation, maybe you can get a union behind you, especially if you're running against a Republican and they're kind of up against the wall. Something to think about. And then there are the debates. I put it under the positive column because the one thing you do not want to do in a debate is attack your opponent. I guarantee you, in that setting, it will make you look very bad. On the other hand, you should welcome being attacked by one of your opponents for exactly the same reason. The key to surviving a debate situation is to be thoroughly prepared. And the way you thoroughly prepare for a debate, is to practice your debate. Think of every conceivable issue, not just your issues, but the issues that your opponents are pounding on. Get two friends together with you. One of them who will play the Republican opponent, the other one who will play the Democrat opponent. And tell them, no holds barred. Give me everything you've got. Then you work out your answers to the issues that are presented to you. And if you spend the time and the effort to do this, you will go into that debate so well prepared that there's a very good chance you'll make one of the legacy party candidates look stupid, which is what you want. Negative campaigning. I just have one comment on negative campaigning. It's okay as long as you attack issues and not people. People don't want to hear you say anything about the other guy's divorce or the financial scandal where General Dynamics bribed them $150,000 to keep their name up on Capitol Hill. It's all right if other people say that. It is not all right for you to say that. You need to be upbeat, above board, and look like the office holder that you want to be. However, one of the important things about campaigning is that you do need to do opposition research. And here are some places where you can get information on your opponents. Published sources would include, your state constitution. You are running as a libertarian. You want people to have freedom. And in many states, including, I think, all the Midwestern states, probably some in the South and elsewhere, the Bill of Rights to the state constitution actually gives you a lot more rights than the federal constitution grants. I shouldn't say grants, states. Sorry about that. So you can use that. There are also some convenient little provisions that you can use against opponents. For example, in my state constitution, there's a provision that says that the state legislature shall not consider more than one subject in each bill. And I know that's in a lot of state constitutions. When was the last time anybody ever paid attention to that? And yet you know as well, if you're running for state legislature, you know as well as anybody else that they're going to have the omnibus budget bill where they're not only going to talk about the budget, they're going to talk about abortion and illegalizing third parties and everything else. So there may be a good place where you can attack an opponent based on a provision like that. Another one that's pretty good, if your state constitution is old enough, is one that says that public funds shall not be used to buy stock or lend support to any private corporation. That's a good way to talk your voters into outlawing tax abatements. Or we have an even more egregious example here in Ohio. We replaced our development department with a semi-private, semi-public corporation called Jobs Ohio, which then the legislature made totally unaccountable to anyone, including the Republican state auditor. You can believe that will come up in a libertarian campaign somewhere. Next thing you can do is look up an opponent's name in a search engine. I'm not fond of using the verb Google because I have some things about Google I don't like. But whatever your favorite search engine is, just look up their name. One, you'll find their website if you don't know it already. Second, you'll find other things that the opponent has come up with, and you'll find a lot of newspaper and other entries that talk about your opponent. I'm talking about your incumbent opponent. But you may find some good things about your other opponent as well. The important thing is you want information. You want the best information you can get, because you're figuring out how to leverage your issues in a way that is advantageous to your candidacy. Another place you can look are newspaper files. I imagine that there are a lot of newspapers, even today, that haven't gotten online yet. And yes, I remember some years ago, before the internet became widespread, of spending 4 days in a library near Cleveland, spinning through several years of the weekly newspaper, or excuse me, daily newspaper, trying to find references to my candidate's opponent. Usually research is a lot easier than that, even when you have microfilm, but we did find something good out of that. We found that the incumbent Democrat was one of the laziest state senators in the state Senate. In fact, he was absent from voting more than anyone else by a considerable margin. We played that up, and the Republican won in a district that's usually pretty hard for Republicans to win. I know every district is hard for Libertarians to win, but we're working on it. We're working on it. All right. Look at the opponent's campaign finance reports. Now again, you may not necessarily want to say that your opponent's been bought by Goldman Sachs, but one way you can differentiate yourself from both of your opponents is that large corporations often give to both legacy party candidates. And so you might be able to say, for example, if the top 10 of your Democrat opponent has 4 or 5 items from the top 10 of your Republican opponent, you can say, see, they're all alike. They support big business. The Libertarian Party, however, believes that we favor the small businessman. We want people to have opportunity. We want people to have jobs, and small business is a source of jobs. We've talked about that earlier in Carla's presentation. Now, here's some specific suggestions based on what office you are running for. If you're running for executive office, which would be governor, statewide offices, county offices, then here's some places where you want to look. Check meeting minutes. See what your opponent has done in the meetings. And if your state has any kind of open records law, these should be very, very easy to access. And even if you're running for something like governor belongs to different boards and commissions. For example, in our state, the governor is part of what we call the controlling board. They have to approve all state purchases of $1 million or more. Looking at the minutes of the controlling board might produce some interesting results. And you can apply this to the situation in your own state. State auditors' findings. I lost my campaign for county recorder because no one told me that state auditors issue findings against office holders. Now, in your state, it may not be called the state auditor, but I'm sure you have some kind of a board or individual who is responsible for making sure that the books are honest. It turned out that my opponent had some really nasty irregularities in the way he handled cash from the copying machine account. And if I had known that, I probably would have won the election. And the next guy who ran did know about it, and he did win the election. And we're talking about against a 24-year incumbent. And on the county level, that can be particularly challenging. So look for things like that. These all relate to how your office holder is acting in office, so it's fair game. And look at court records, and this might be good for your gubernatorial candidates too. I'm not talking about the divorces or child support or any of that stuff. I'm talking about being sued as an office holder. Quite often, there are lawsuits that are against the state of Ohio and against John Kasich and against blah, blah, blah. Those are the suits you want to look at. You can look in the court records under the name of your opponent, and you can see that there may be some interesting things that may not have gotten so much publicity, but may be valuable to your campaign. Now, on the legislative side, in Ohio we call this the status report of legislation. It's simply a list of all the bills, who introduced them, and whether they're in committee or been treated by the full House or gone to the Senate or whatever. In other states, it's called Last Action on Bills. It's available through your state legislature's research arm. That's a good way of getting an overview of what the legislature has done and what your opponent has sponsored. Another source, once you've figured out which bills you're interested in, is that you can go online to look at your state's bill text and summaries. And I know every state has this because 4 years ago I was researching state sovereignty issues and I looked at every single state legislature website. When you want to see how your opponent has voted, you know, we always talk about voting record. The House and Senate journals are where you get that. And you congressional candidates can use this too. It simply says that on House Bill 365, which is to legalize gay marriage in the state of Ohio, there were 143 ayes and 17 nays, and here are the legislators who voted aye, and here are the legislators who voted nay. And you just collect those on the bills that you are interested in. This is also how various organizations do their scorecards. Now, there are a few cautions I want to give you about using the House and Senate journals on voting record. First, make sure that you are talking about a vote on the bill itself. There are a lot of amendments that get into journals. There are also a lot of procedural matters that can get into journals. For example, a legislator may vote apparently contrary to the way they promised because the bill was part of a larger bill and the legislator was for or against that larger bill. Or because, as we said earlier, it's part of a budget. At some point, you may feel compelled to vote for a budget just to get it out of there. Now, I realize as a libertarian, yes, you could be the abominable no man and say you're going to vote against every budget until it gets to where you want, but I think you'll find that that's an untenable position politically. And finally, you may find that they will vote a certain way to close the debate. It's taken too long, time to move on. So keep those things in mind when you're looking at voting records. And another easy way that works in some places is you can look at the incumbent page on the House or Senate website. Quite often there will be a tab that says, these are the bills I sponsored. And that could save you some time even looking at the status report of legislation. All right, now we know why we're running. We've done our speeches. We've done our opposition research. Now it's time to do marketing. Fact of life. A consumer needs to see or hear a message 23 times before it sinks in. And that means that they have to have heard of you 23 times before they even listen to you on issues. The second thing is, voters obviously cannot vote for you until they know who you are and what you stand for. Now, how do we do marketing? Well, there are two ways. There's online and there's traditional. Online. First principle of online marketing is always and heavily publicize your website. You all do have websites, don't you? And your social media pages. And I'll talk a little bit more about social networking in a minute. Put it on your cards. Put it in your mailings. Put it out at the bottom line of your television ads or whatever else you do. This is where people get more information. And as Evan said earlier, you don't want to have a lot of detailed information in your speeches or in your news releases because frankly, most people don't care. But for the benefit of those who do care, go straight to your website. They can find out everything they want to know and more. Now, with websites and blogs, one interesting fact that's come up from recent research is that a well-designed website can be just as effective as direct mail and media in persuading the voter to support your campaign. But I would also urge you to get professional help. Excuse me, get to that in a minute. Get professional help. Electronic billboards don't cut it anymore. A website is a place where you want to engage people. Start conversations. Send information that your supporters need and your staff. You want to communicate about your campaign and gather information from other people that you need to keep your campaign moving. Very important, graphics of your website need to match the look and feel of your other graphics. Keep your appearance consistent. Your website needs to have a clear call to action. It's not enough that you have your issues out there. Put a donate button on your page. You could use some money, right? And also have a page where people can sign up to volunteer. It might be an email form. They press the button. It's sent to volunteers at DobermanPinscher for DogCatcher.com, and then they could go right to the volunteer coordinator. Same thing with the money. Link it to a PayPal site, for example, where they can send you the money on their credit card, and then your treasurer picks it up. Couple things that you need to know about navigation. You want it to be easy as possible for people to navigate your website. And one other reason for keeping your site simple is most people aren't as old-fashioned as I am and access the internet on their personal computer. They're more likely to use their cell phone or a tablet. So make sure that the site that is designed is friendly for those interfaces as well. Try to have very simple menus. One thing that frustrates a lot of people is if you have to go to a drop-down menu that says issues followed by social issues followed by gay marriage followed by something else. You want to be able to access anything in 2 clicks at the most. So that means it's been a rule forever that you don't do horizontal scrolling. Now it's turning into a rule that you don't do vertical scrolling either. That's not always possible. Sometimes you do have a little bit too much content, but just keep that rule in mind. Now I'll show you a couple of examples of websites that I like, and you can see what you think as well. I did not do this, but this is for one of my clients, Kevin Knedler, who's running for Ohio Secretary of State. From its appearance, I would say it was done in WordPress. And WordPress is a very easy tool to use. If you absolutely can't afford professional help, find yourself a computer savvy teenager to build you a WordPress site, and it'll still look pretty decent. He has this nice welcome page with a statement that basically summarizes his campaign. He has some very simple buttons. He says, meet Kevin, candidate bio. Key issues, Team Liberty is inviting people to volunteer and contribute is what you think it is. Now, if you're running for a really technical position, like the Texans who are running for all these commissioner spots, maybe you don't have to be quite as flashy, but you still have to have a good readable site. This one also appears to be done in WordPress. Mark Miller might have a little bit too much on here. As you see, he has quite a few buttons on the top, but he does cover all the necessary bases. One thing about this kind of office is most people don't understand what you're running for. As he points out even on his welcome page, the Texas Railroad Commissioner also regulates the oil and gas industry in Texas, so that's pretty significant. So he explains why it is important that you vote for the right person for Railroad Commissioner. I had to do the same thing when I ran for County Recorder. Most people don't know the difference between a County Recorder, a Clerk of Courts, or even County Auditor. So you have to explain this simply and easily. Another example that I will show you is from Nation Builder. I haven't heard a libertarian yet who hasn't fallen in love with it. It is a Libertarian Party service, as you can see, and some of the buttons on top are generic to the party. I'm not sure I can even read this myself. They've got buttons for issues, about Julie. This is for Julie Fox, who's running for state comptroller in Illinois. Let's see, a vote pledge, sign up to volunteer. If you're one of those millennials I talked about earlier, you can press a register to vote button. You can contact the campaign, donate, or get a list of events that she will be appearing there. What I especially liked about this page, in addition to the features that are standard in Nation Builder, I liked her statement on the front page. Very simple, states her qualifications, very direct and to the point. Next, we can talk about social networking. And of course, we're talking about Twitter, Facebook, and all that. 74% of adults use at least one social networking site. But there are an awful lot of them, as you probably have heard. So you need to use them strategically. It is very time-consuming to do a social networking site well. And you need to have a volunteer that's dedicated to doing that, because as a candidate, you will not have time. Now, which ones you use depends on your audience. This is a study that was done by the Pew Research Center about how people use social networking. And what it says is, I know the graphics are hard to read, that 64% of adults use Facebook, and 30% of adults find that Facebook is the major source of news for them. 51% use YouTube, 10% get news from it. 19% use LinkedIn, 3% get news from it. 16% use Twitter, 8% get news from it. And the rest I'll just skip for now. But when you look at the demographics of how people use social networking, you find some other interesting things. Younger voters tend to prefer to use Twitter. They don't like Facebook anymore because that's what the old folks use. Older voters, however, do prefer Facebook. It's an established platform, it's easy to use. And anyway, that's what their kids are posting their pictures on, so they were kind of dragged into it. Professionals, If you're going after, for example, potential donors, or you want to impress people with your professional qualifications, you'd use LinkedIn. And one interesting result that I found was that women tend to like Pinterest. But maybe you need to just talk to people that you know and see what works in your area and with your voters. Then we have Facebook. Here's an example of a Facebook page by one of the most prolific Facebook posters I know in American politics. This is Gigi Bowman. She's running for state senate in New York. She has meticulously documented practically everything in her campaign, and frankly, she has too much on her Facebook page. But you can't complain that you're not getting enough information about her campaign. She talks about every appearance that she gives. In the first days of her campaign, she even talked about what she was feeling and what she was doing to get started and the frustration she put up with. Of course, she's way past that now. She's actually running a 2-year campaign. And now she's at the point where she's acting like regular candidates and talking about issues and getting people excited about her serving in the New York State Senate. The other thing you can do is YouTube. A lot of people like getting their information from videos. And if you have a 9th grade or less reading level, maybe that's the way to go because you don't have to read it. If you do videos in YouTube, though, keep them short. People don't have a lot of patience for 20-minute or 1-hour videos. In fact, YouTube used to have a restriction that said you could only make it 10 minutes. I would suggest you keep it down to about 5 or less. Just use it to get a point across, to get a good visual. And if you don't have someone who's an expert videographer, hire a professional to do this. There are an awful lot of really, really badly done videos in YouTube. You don't want yours to be one of them. Here's Gigi again. She has a gazillion YouTube videos. And I talked about that campaign diary. She has that in YouTube too, and some of it's kind of entertaining to watch. It was amateurish, but it could be worse. But again, just have a few videos, maybe that address your major issues. And again, keep it short and to the point. Remember to smile and look like you know what you're doing. And watch your speech making. You don't want a lot of uhs, ums, repeated words and phrases. I'm speaking like a Toastmaster now. But the important thing about that is that you want to sound like you are knowledgeable and at least a little bit polished. Now, traditional media. And by the way, don't feel too frustrated. I will have time for questions at the end. Traditional media include direct voter contact. And of course, the classic direct voter contact method is the literature drop, or door-to-door. Few tips on going door-to-door. It was a lot easier 30 years ago when you didn't have to worry about somebody coming to the door with a gun in their hand aimed at you. So if you do this, always do it in the daytime. Never go alone. And there's another good reason why you should never go alone. You're going to have a lot of frustrations. You're going to have pent-up emotions. Somebody's going to really tick you off. If you have a volunteer there going with you, or at least going on the other side of the street with you, you have somebody you can vent to before you go to the next constituent, because the voters aren't going to care how you feel. They just want you to be upbeat and knowledgeable and get your message and the hell out of here. Use a walking list. Never enter the home of somebody you do not know. that would be a nice way to get yourself caught up in a frivolous lawsuit. Not to mention the fact it could be personally dangerous. Give your elevator speech and have a supply of brochures ready. And what you should do before you go door to door is you take a bunch of these brochures and you just write with your pen, "Sorry, I missed you," and your signature. Then when somebody is not home, you use that same pen and write the name of the voter before the message. I know it's mass produced, and sometimes even the voter knows it's mass produced, but it impresses the heck out of them anyway.
What was the second part of that? You said, "Sorry, I missed you," with the pen. Leave that on like your door hanger or whatever you got.
Yeah.
And then,
No, I said it may be mass produced.
okay.
It may even be mass produced to the voter, but it still impresses the heck out of them.
But are you saying sign with the voter's name?
Yes, voter's name, "Sorry I missed you," and your name. And if you're running an extremely low budget campaign, I think you could do worse than the one World's Simplest Political Quiz. But I think you can do a lot better as well, because you need something that's personalized to your campaign. All right. Now, some other ways that you can see voters in person. We can talk about, I gotta hear myself again, sorry about that. Free media. You don't have, I don't know very many libertarian candidates who have 500,000 that they're going to drop in media. I know one who may come close to that, but we won't go into that right now. So for the rest of us, you want to concentrate on the free media, the earned media. This was the thrust of Evan's presentation before, and what I'm saying is not going to duplicate his very much. There is a handout from the Libertarian National Committee that lists 36 points to increase media coverage. And if you signed up on the sign-up sheet that's going around, you will get that as one of the handouts. I like what Evan said about handouts. I don't completely agree with him. I think sometimes you need to see the information in a second form. But I'm also too cheap to print them out. So you'll get them by email. And I will also mention, slight commercial note, that you will also be signed up for a candidate newsletter that I put out every 2 weeks, just with some other tips and hints. Get your media contact list, make sure it's a good one. If you can afford to buy it, I would recommend that. If you can't afford to buy it, there are some websites out there. For example, there's one's called 50 State Newspapers in 50 states, something like that. Just look up media lists and you'll come up with a few sites. It's not as good as what he suggested, but it's better than nothing. Be short and to the point with reporters. They don't have a whole lot of time. They're too busy drinking their whiskey or bashing another libertarian. But when a reporter calls you, make sure you call back as soon as possible, because they do have tight deadlines. Be sensitive to when they're under deadline pressure. You don't want to call, for example, a daily newspaper writer late in the afternoon, because that's when they're getting it ready to go to press. And that's true even of morning newspapers. Keep your news release, Evan said 5 paragraphs, I would say 1 page. It probably works out about the same. But make sure that whenever you send out a news release, and I loved what he said about setting up your media schedule and that kind of thing, but always make sure that your communications person will follow up with the reporters where you send it out in 2 ways. Give them a call You have targeted these to specific media. You're not spamming, so you can call a few reporters, or your communications person can call a few reporters. And also follow up with email. Reporters tend to be a little bit flighty, or they have, I think they may have some attention deficit syndrome. So you need to help them out a little bit. Do both the phone call and the email. And as he stressed, localize your story, especially when you're talking about small town media. The newspaper in Hooterville couldn't care less about your appearance in Pixley, if you're old enough to get that reference. There's also paid advertising. When you're doing paid advertising, remember that you're not only paying for the time in the TV or radio station and for the space in the newspaper, you got budget production costs. The amount it takes to film that video that goes into the TV ad, or produce the artwork that goes into the newspaper. And be wise with your money. It's much better to use just one ad 10 times than to use several ads once or twice. You're just wasting your money, and you're making your message harder to get through. Use those simple bullet point messages that Evan talked about. And Carla too, for that matter. Another way that you can get some name recognition in August or September is to use billboards. Billboards are not terribly expensive, but you want to make sure that whatever you do on the billboard side is on a highway that you know is going to be heavily traveled by the people in the area that are voting for you. There's no sense in having a Congress candidate who's from the north side of Indianapolis putting up a billboard on the south side. So be very firm with your billboard company on that if you do that. One other thing about billboards, keep it very simple. Just your name. Not your picture, not a huge message. Just your name for what you're running for. And if you want to throw in the Libertarian or the Porcupine, that's okay too. The idea is people cannot read more than 5 words on a billboard without causing an accident. So keep that in mind. Now, of course, another easy way to do this is to put up lawn signs. That sounds very foreign to me, because most Ohioans would say yard signs, but I think lawn signs is more common. If you do lawn signs, recruit a volunteer committee to do it, because they take location, they take maintenance, and you want to make good and sure that they are taken down at the end of the campaign. And if you are running a local campaign, one way to let out your aggressions on election day while you're anxiously awaiting the election results is late afternoon of election day, just go out and take down your own yard signs. It's a little bit of physical exercise, and it'll keep you calm. That tip I got from my campaign manager when I ran for county recorder, and it's actually one of the best things I got from him. And of course, you have to have handouts. I'm not saying this is the best handout I've ever seen. It's not bad. A couple things that I don't like about it. I would like to have seen some treatment that would have made the red areas pop out more. If you had put maybe a little bit of light gray shadow behind the red letters, that would have helped. The other thing I don't like about it is that he has no specific issues. Even though you're only talking bullet points, what he talks about is extremely general and doesn't really, actually he sounds like a Republican or a Democrat. We want to attack specific issues. So use those bullet points that Carla and Evan talked about and put a few of those on there. the when and where, that's okay. I don't know, I would call that very optional. But it's good that he has his website on there, and the picture's pretty decent. All right, but the thing is, since you don't have that $500,000 media budget to spend on your mailings, you want to think about targeting. Now, the major parties look at targeting from 2 points of view. They look at targeting the base support of the party, which basically means where are the areas that are most heavily populated with voters of your party. But they also look at where are the voters persuadable, where do they split the ticket. With libertarians, it's simple. You don't have a base. So what you need to do is look at the ticket splitting. But I would even go a step a little bit further than that. You want heavy independent areas. You want the people who say, I do not want to be a Democrat or a Republican. I reject both parties. Those are the people that are open to your message. And so what you're talking about is persuading the voters. Now here's a tip that's not terribly well known. There is a concept in voting where people will tend to vote at the top of the ballot. Almost everybody votes for president or governor. But as you go down the ballot, the votes tend to fall off. One of the things that you can do to help yourself is find the undervote. And the undervote means the people who voted for governor or president but did not vote in your race last time. They didn't vote in your race last time either because they didn't know anything about the other candidates or because they didn't like either major party candidate. It's like in 2008, I wasn't converted to libertarianism yet, and I didn't like either presidential candidate, so I left it blank. People will do that more often down ballot. Those are the people that if you reach them, you will make an impact. Now, how do you get the information you need on that? Well, voter lists and election statistics are usually available from your elections authority. In some states, that's the Secretary of State or State Board of Elections. In others, you may have to go to the counties. But the nice thing about it is it's free in most cases, especially if it's online. You might have to incur a charge if your elections authority still does the printout thing. Now, the other thing you can do if you have some money, and this is probably a good idea, how much it costs depends on the size of your race. You can buy mailing lists that are very accurate or walking lists from companies like L2, it used to be called Labels and Lists, or I forget the name of the other company I have in mind. It's Voters something or other.
Voter Gravity?
Yeah. And they will get you the list. And if you decide to do that voter registration drive I mentioned earlier, those companies can also give you a list of the people who are not registered voters. So you can target mailings to them with an absentee ballot application if your state allows you to do that. So now we have talked about building your message, communicating that message, targeting your voters. And what we are really saying in all of this is that to define and effectively market your message will make you more electable. You will have more name recognition, which you will need before anyone even hears your message. You will show voters that you know the office you are running for and can give them a clear idea as to what to do when elected. There's my contact information. You don't have to write it down, just pick up one of my brochures in the back. I'm going to make this a mercifully short commercial. I'm a political consultant who does libertarians only, and because I know you can't afford to pay me $13,000 to run your campaign, I do everything a la carte. Find the thing that in your campaign you are weakest at doing and give me a call. And I don't care whether you live in Ohio or Alaska. There's Skype, there's the phone. For state parties also, I have been doing candidate seminars with this and more. You can ask Kevin in Ohio or J.J. Summerall in North Carolina about the seminars I conducted in those two states. And of course, I'd love to do yours because I like traveling. All right, let's take questions. Wow. Sir.
When you were talking earlier on about the debates, and you said, you know, never let them get negative on you, would I presume that you would have disapproved of what you would only call them negative, what Lyndon Johnson and Ronald Reagan did, and the zingers that they...
Well, actually, Ronald Reagan, I don't really remember Ronald Reagan doing anything really negative.
Well,
what he did was he had a witty response to a tough question.
Which is what Lyndon Johnson did back some years earlier.
No, those are fine.
Okay.
What I'm saying is you're not doing a direct attack on your opponent. Now, if you get a nasty question, that's actually a very good technique. It was like somebody asked or questioned Ronald Reagan's ability to be president because of his age, and he said that, what was it, Thomas Jefferson said that age is less important than what you can do, and and that's what he told me, and I thought was a good idea, something like that.
I think he said somebody wasn't going to hold the other man's age against him.
Okay, right.
You're not going to hold the caucuses.
Right,
anyway,
that's
so
right.
That's a good point.
Yes, Matt.
Yeah, you were saying that you need negative and positive in your campaign.
Yes.
Would you say positive 3/4, negative 25%?
I would say the percentages probably would vary with the campaign, but I would say as a general rule, if you can stay more positive than negative, you'd be much better off. Keep it as positive as possible, but don't overlook opportunities to attack your opponent on issues.
What about, like, how would you characterize if you want to go after your opponent on whether it be their voting record or, you know, during the last campaign, so-and-so said they were going to do this, but they voted for the exact opposite. That's not really negative, that's kind of like sticking to issues, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was calling negative campaigning, but the truth is, I said earlier that negative campaigning, you stick to the issues.
Right.
I'm using negative here perhaps in the popular perception rather than in the political junkie perception. But you have it right. Yeah.
You, in your last issues, you're talking about targeting mailing lists and listed a couple of companies that could parse them down a little bit for you. It worries me that somebody knows that a particular voter voted for president and governor, but not for some of those down ticket campaigns or down ticket.
Thank you. That's an important point. And I'm sorry I confused you on it. We're actually talking about two somewhat separate things. I'm talking about people that are in precincts where you have a high level of undervote for your office.
Okay.
Nobody should know how anybody voted.
Okay.
And I'm saying then you order the mailing labels from the precincts that you found fit those characteristics. Yes?
Yeah, first a question to you, talking about billboard advertising. Any idea what that costs per month and the other costs involved in it?
The cost for what?
You know, roadside billboards?
I would say it varies with the media market. You just have to see which is right in your area. I don't know what it is now. Has anybody done a billboard campaign?
In Minneapolis, it's anywhere from 150 a month to 20,000 a month. Depends on where you are. So the ones that face a cornfield are like 150. Freeway are pretty expensive, and then ones that are graphic and change and all that kind of stuff, it gets pretty pricey. It's amazing how I was shocked how wide the spectrum is.
Yeah. The second comment I had, you talked about advertising. One of the things we found effective in North Dakota is we have a multiplex movie theater with 15 screens, and we're advertising that for 7 months, all the way up through the general election for $700. Every screen gets a showing of 15-second libertarian commercial, you know, time after time after time. So and these theaters are pretty packed in that particular theater, so we're getting good coverage for $700 for 7 months.
What a great way to target millennials.
Yeah. Some of the theaters, it doesn't work out out here because some of these theaters, they have 20, 30 minutes of commercials before they, you know, you get to the main movie and still wouldn't work. But that one works out very good.
Great. Great idea. All right. Well, you may have questions after you leave here. I will be here throughout the Libertarian Convention, so just buttonhole me and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Not quite done yet, but I'm close. When the polls close on November 4th, 2014, which by the way is 4 months and 9 days from now, one of 3 things will happen with your campaign. First, you may win the campaign. If you have done that, you will have helped make history. You will have helped translate libertarian principles into policy, which is the reason we're here. You also will probably have given absolutely everything you have to make that victory happen. But if you do that, you will not only elect yourself, you will strengthen the Libertarian Party, you will increase our visibility in your community or state, and you will be making great inroads for liberty. Or, number 2, sorry, catch me later. Or number 2, you may lose the campaign after giving it your all and doing everything you possibly can to win. And if you lose the campaign under those circumstances, then you still will be building a strong base both for the party and for yourself. If you lose, stay active politically. Maybe run for the same office again, and you'll have a much better chance of being elected 2 or 4 years from now. Or, number 3, you might decide to run what they call the informational campaign. Do us all a favor if you're going to do that. First, accept my apology for wasting your time the last 2 hours. Have a nice summer, and whatever you do, don't try to raise any money because the serious candidates need it. A political campaign is one of the most physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually demanding things you can do in life. It also can be, for those very reasons, one of the great mountaintop experiences that you will have. You have received much information today, all of it geared toward helping you win. Make good use of it. Contact us if you have questions. But go out there and win!
You mind if I say one thing? As elected libertarian, it sure is fun giving the system hell.
All right, so we got Sharon Harris from the Advocates for Self-Government coming up at 5. You might notice that we are videotaping these presentations. We hope to have them up on our website, lsla.org, as soon as we can. My last little commercial, you got your delegate handbook. You see we have LSLA vendor bingo. How we pay for this training is we sell the booths out here. So if you would, visit our vendors. If you get everyone to sign off on your sheet, you'll enter in. We've got some really nice prizes. We've got like a $300 gift certificate from the Advocates. We've got, I think, 2 $300 gift certificates from the Vapor Station. So we've got some really nice gifts to get out. And so